occupied zone. The chair is against the walls. The chair is against the walls. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern. For about an hour, we talk about guns. And if anybody's listening over on the Gun Channel side tonight, maybe there's something out there for you if you know who it is crying at the beginning of the show right there. But we'll keep digging in. We broadcast this show for now over on YouTube.com, which is an old-fashioned platform that has a way to go live, and then we embed that over at gunchannels.com. And soon we'll be using guntube.org to do the live show. But we come live every night, every weeknight, and just try to keep a conversation going about guns, and we try not to react to the news of the day. And because it's Wednesday, I guess I was going to say we're going to talk about entertainment, but we actually don't have any schedule today. In fact, our schedule today was going to be to schedule things out. But we have a couple of people joining us, and we had some off-air discussion here, so maybe we can just kind of start with that and then dig into some scheduling. But we are going to be looking for topics for future shows. So at this point, the show, as you can see, has become a panel discussion. People who are over on gun channels that want to join in, and we talk about the topics of the day. So if you'd like to be part of the show, and in more ways than one, you can offer some suggestions for topics here, and we can incorporate those into future shows here as we're scheduling them. But for now, we've got Cycle Camp joining us from Connecticut. Thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks for inviting me, and hope everybody had a nice Halloween.
So far uneventful here, but same. Dead Horse in Utah, thanks for joining.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
Got Dog in Nevada, state nearby.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Taters in Michigan is jumping in as well.
Good evening, everybody.
Like I said, there are some other links out there. If you had a green dot over on Gun Channels, I probably threw a link at you. If you're interested in joining, let us know. And what we were just talking about off here there, we were talking about if the military sidearm is sort of universal at this point between the different branches, right? If they're going to make a new Space Force, then are they going to use the same sidearm?
Yeah, I mean, it's the question of could they? Would it even be feasible to use a standard firearm in space for any reasonable task? Or are they going to have to come up with some whole new weapon system?
Well, I think there's two different ways to look at that. It's like, one, if there's combat inside of a spaceship or inside of a space station versus combat like outside, like in your spacesuit, like on the moon or floating in space, right? So there's kind of two different, I think, things that you have to kind of look at there. So they might have different weapons, one for like inside a spaceship or inside a space station, and one for, actually out in, the vacuum of space.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose small arms calibers would be effective, like you said, on like the moon kind of situation, because then you are dealing with some kind of gravity and minimal risk, I suppose. But I think that inside any kind of spacecraft, I think they'd have to limit it to hand-to-hand skills with the hand weapons, batons, knives, things of that nature.
What about that new frangible ammo? I'm not sure. I know most of our spaceships are made out of like aluminum and titanium and stuff, right? But I don't know how powerful that frangible ammo really is compared to like aluminum sheeting, like on a space shuttle or the International Space Station.
I'm not 100%, but I know that some of that frangible ammo has gone through ductwork. So if it can go through steel ductwork, that would be of concern.
I think they'll probably take a cue from the science fiction writers of the last 30 years and go back to flechettes.
Yeah.
You know, because it don't take much to disable a guy in a spacesuit, and it's a lot safer in a control room environment than trying to fire an actual round.
I've seen a lot of these like homemade rail guns lately, these electromagnetic rail guns, and I've seen some like homemade smaller versions. And so I'm wondering what kind of possibility would those be in a, whether it's inside a spaceship or outside a spaceship, but instead of having propellants and gas and, you're in an enclosed, oxygen rich atmosphere, right? And fire's always a risk, sparks, stuff like that inside of a spaceship. So they'd have to worry about that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're onto something.
What about a wrist rocket, like Cycle's saying, just wrist rocket to the face mask?
Yeah. I mean, I think that has potential. Again, I'm not sure how fragile the hull of a spaceship is. That I just don't know. I think that you guys were on. I think that like it also like you were talking about earlier, Dead Horse. I think like when you talk about the rail guns, if I were to think of it from like a ship to ship, almost like a naval battle from a ship to ship standpoint, I think rail guns would probably be a way to go. But I don't necessarily think portable rail guns with soldiers running around inside ships is feasible. At least not now.
Do you see the kind of stuff they're saying, the hateful stuff they're saying in the YouTube side? This is why you have to worry about it. That's why when you have anonymous logins over there.
I don't even watch the YouTube side. Not worth our energy.
Potato cannons. The was suggested. I'm just reading what's out there.
Now, Midnight Range out there says that air marshals carry frangible ammo for the airplanes, and I guess I'm guessing that it's probably somewhat similar, the hull of a airplane, right, versus a space shuttle or space station. They're both made
I think that's more for the people than the plane. I think the frangible ammo is so that you don't shoot the guy and the guy in the seat behind him and the guy in the seat next to him.
Yeah, I mean, and keep in mind,
but it's also for the, so that it doesn't have as likely to go through the airplane. Because the airplane has like FRP and then some insulation and then skin. And there's maybe control lines and stuff.
But to my understanding, an airplane isn't as, I guess, delicate would be the word to use, as a space station. I mean, they act like any hole at a space station is catastrophic, they act like. So I'm not sure if that's just overemphasized hype or if how true that is.
They took like some wire and then put like tinfoil over it, and that's the space station. It's got to be more substantial than that. Not like if you stick your arm next to it, or if you lean on it, you're going to stick your arm through it.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying that let's say that we use frangible, because I agree, air marshals do use frangible ammunition, but I also know that they've said that a hole in an airplane from a gun round, the pressure isn't great enough to be instantly catastrophic. And from what I've
Go ahead.
and from my understanding, and again, I'm completely ignorant on this topic, so I can be completely wrong, but they act like a pin, not a pinhole, but like a pen hole, like a pen that we would write with, hole in a spaceship or in a satellite system, I guess. They act like would be absolutely catastrophic to the system. So I just don't know the dimensions of the vacuum concept.
So what if we get with Tac Daddy and get that lightweight soft armor, those panels that are so lightweight, and line the space station with that stuff? And then that way, if there is an incident up there, there's always a backstop made out of soft armor.
You talk about that stuff with the video where the guy shoots himself?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Super lightweight, so it's cheap and economical to get into space.
Yeah, and apparently it'll handle most pistol rounds.
So Google says that the walls of the lunar lander were were only 3 to 4 times thicker than that of a soda can.
That's the lunar lander, though.
Yeah.
Space station. Lunar
Now,
lander.
space station can be thicker and bigger because it's brought up there a piece at a time. But
Yeah,
if you're talking about actual vessels that are driving around, they're going to be pretty thin. Just because we haven't figured out a good way to propel them, you know.
So I'm not seeing info on the whole of the space station, but it says the windows, the glass on the space station is up to 1 1/4 inches thick.
Yeah.
4 panes of glass.
Yeah. So it's not like they're going to have tinfoil and then 4 panes of glass. I think it's the difference between a car and a house. You know, a car, you could poke a stick through if you really wanted to. A house, that ain't going to happen so easy. So a space station's meant to live up there in space, in orbit for a long, long time. Oh, if you go down to what material is the space station made of?
It's got Kevlar and Nextel and all kinds of crap in it. Wow.
They already put the soft armor.
Oh, they're already putting Kevlar in it. All right.
I'm switching to 44 Magnum.
Yep. The outer bumper is made of aluminum, and the shield is normally stuffed with single intermediate blanket consisting of 6 layers of Nextel and 6 layers of Kevlar. I don't know what Nextel is. I thought that was a phone company.
It's a bunch of old phones, so that's why
they took all those old Nokias that you couldn't break.
Well, as long as they're not using those galaxies there that catch on fire.
Yeah, like, oh no, that's what we put in the insulation of the space shuttle or the space station.
That'd be hilarious.
Well, that's actually pretty cool. I didn't realize Kevlar was being used in spaceships. And as far as I'm trying to look up this Nextel material, but it appears to be pretty durable also. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes pistol rounds at least seem more viable.
But with all the tiny tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of little minute fragments of that have become dysfunctional over the years and collided with other things and smashed into a bazillion pieces that just need to nick something because they're traveling at 10,000 miles per hour or whatever.
27,000 kilometers an hour.
Yep. Yeah, immensely fast. So you just, one little tiny ass thing to make a nick in something critical.
Yeah. NASA says that even dust-sized grains present considerable danger. Wow.
So
really all you need is a big ass can of ball bearings and just throw them in front of whatever you're trying to destroy.
Velocity, not size,
right,
matters.
Has that the Nextel? If you type in Nextel material, it's called a Whipple shield.
Yes.
Hypervelocity impact shield used to protect manned and unmanned spacecrafts from collisions with micrometeorites or orbital debris, whose velocities generally range between 3 and 18 kilometers per second. So that's 1 to 11 miles per second.
Wow.
Right, measurements. So I guess it's just like a giant. It must be like oversensitive things, right? That's why it said it's Kevlar or Nextel.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's interesting, and it's definitely something to think about. I still see, at least with current technology, I think there'd be a bigger emphasis on up close and personal combat over, especially with how expensive it would be to get all this stuff into space.
Well, I'm kind of excited for the Space Force because, I mean, look at the budget the military has versus NASA's annual budget, right? So I think this will actually advance space exploration and space technology.
Yeah, think of the problems they're going to have to try to solve to get any kind of a significant number of people up there.
I I have my concerns after, we're not really through, but I'm going to say, we're partial. It's not as much of a concern, the Cold War, that to now escalate another aspect of living concerns me. If you look at our dependency on all the things that are out there, traveling over our heads.
Yeah, but this could also give us a form of security with those things traveling over our heads. If we had a stationary man force available to always go to do those repairs, somebody, a group that's in that environment, so we're not always having to make that travel in an emergency state.
Right, but it doesn't have to be military to go do what you're saying.
No, but
I mean, because if it is military, then you're just begging other countries to then put up their own military force, and now we have a new area where people can die and affect far more than just the people that are up there.
What about for like emergencies? Because I think it would be far faster if you were already up in space to basically go anywhere on the planet in literally like under 20 minutes, anywhere on the planet in under 20 minutes if you're already up in space. Because like I've seen some videos of like them orbiting in the I can't remember if it was the ISS or the space shuttle, but they were saying that they see like 6 sunrises a day or something because of they're rotating around Earth much faster than Earth is rotating. So they rotate Earth like every, what was it? Was it like every 23 minutes or something? It was something really fast. Like that, they orbit Earth really, really fast. So they can basically get anywhere in the world in just minutes.
Yeah, that's what makes it so hard to do the radio reception with them, because from the time they come up over the horizon to the time they go back down over the other side is only like 6-8 minutes. It's very little time at all.
Now, to have a secondary emergency repair facility, I think makes perfect sense. Because right now, that whole system up there is almost at a single point of failure.
Yeah, I mean, they're still running IBM servers up there.
Yeah, I mean, we're totally dependent on the Russians to get people up and down.
And I don't know if you guys saw recently, but the last Russian rocket blew up. Luckily, the cosmonauts in it survived.
Yeah, I saw they had I saw they had a failure to take off.
Yeah, and luckily
they were able to jettison before the thing hit the big one.
Which is really lucky, right? I mean, but the guy the reason why they were going up there is they were only really taking one guy up there, and that was the expert that was to fix the hole that's in the space station right now, because there's a hole like a meter wide in the space station right now. And the guy who was supposed to fix that was on the rocket that just blew up. And if they can't make it back up by December, they got one more rocket. They only have one rocket right now. And if they can't make it by December, they're talking about evacuating the people on the ISS space station. And it'll be like the first time in over like 20 years that no one's been constantly in space.
I never understood why we took all of our shuttles out of service instead of keeping one in service in case of emergency. It's like a lifeboat sort of thing, and then totally dependent on just one country's system as a method of getting up and down. That makes no sense to me to this day.
We do have a type of space shuttle, I believe it's called the Aurora, and it just served like 180 days unmanned in space and then came back down. It's basically like a drone, and but it's big enough to carry people and cargo. It's like a huge drone, right? And they had it up in space for half a year and doing stuff with it. And so like they've been testing that kind of top secret-ish because it's on the military Air Force side of things, not the NASA side of things. So we don't always hear about everything that the capabilities that we actually have to make it into space if needed to.
Right. Well, I was aware of the Aurora program. I was not aware that it was that far along, as well as, it's not intended to necessarily to be a lifeboat.
Well, I mean, I see where Dano's getting with kind of the risk of it being a military initiative, but just I look at from a human history standpoint, every great advancement for the most part that we've made always seems like it has a military initiative behind it. I mean, our industrial revolution was massively pushed by military desires and innovation.
I would use the example of Antarctica as to show how we can successfully work together, even though there are interests in development in a peaceful way to expand the knowledge and science and moving mankind forward to find out what's an example, what's going down what exactly is involved in Antarctica, that we can do it. It's just a matter of, do we want to do it?
Again, I think that in a perfect world, in the right mindset, that we would have public funding doing it. But so far, that hasn't been working out. So I do think that the military route is most likely to get that ball going. And then maybe the private sector.
Funding.
Well, yeah, NASA just has, I mean,
the money from is us.
yeah, but NASA just gets, probably less than like 1% of what our military funding gets, right? So, I mean, if we can use that money, it's not like we're going to be able to convince our government, hey, give all that money instead of giving it to the Air Force or the Space Force, give it to NASA. That's just not going to happen.
No.
But
what I am not for is some of the commercial projects that have been up to go to outer space as for emergency to help people either get up for a repair or get down for an illness or something.
You mean privatization of spaceflight?
Yes.
Like Virgin Galactic and
exactly.
Stuff like that.
I mean, so when you said not publicly funded, I thought, Muscle Dog, that's what you meant.
No, I'm saying that you get that every time we've had a major technological revolution, for the most part, there's always been a military interest that drove the private sector into wanting to invest in it first. So I think that by getting that the military initiative, since they are going to have the biggest bankroll to play with first, I think them kicking the ball off and getting all of the people in the private sector to say, hey, look, get them excited about, look at this new market. We want to be the first in it. We want to get these contracts. That's what's going to push the private sector into really wanting to invest in it. You know, that's what I think.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but we got to look at the reasons why. They have the vast majority of our money. It's not necessarily because they're better at managing it or they have better scientists.
Bingo. You know how fast the space shuttle flies when it's on a takeoff? Anyone?
Nope.
Like when it's lifting off from the launch pad?
Right.
Oh, probably just a couple thousand miles per hour. Or like 1,800 miles an hour or something. Probably like Mach 3.
Nope. Anyone else?
Is it going to be something ridiculously slow, like 100 miles an hour or something?
No.
Okay.
Well, at what altitude, I guess I would have to ask, because at like 5 feet, it's one speed, and at 10,000 feet, it's another speed. It's accelerating.
Okay. Oh, excuse me. In order to achieve orbit, what final speed does the space shuttle going?
17,500 miles an hour.
Yeah, 17,000 miles an hour. It's about 9 times faster as a regular rifle bullet. Anyway, that's on the internet, so it's true. And you were talking about space shuttle. So I think what Dan
and that makes sense because they said the space station traveled at 27.5 kilometers per hour, 27,500 kilometers, and that's 17.5 is about 28,000 kilometers. So at least the numbers seem to track.
Yeah,
but that's low Earth orbit. That's how fast you got to go to keep from falling back in.
And low Earth orbit's usually only about 200 miles up.
Yeah, it's not very high at all.
Yeah, it's not very high.
So what Dano was saying, I went and interrupted him, I think, was that why are we giving all this money to stupid government? According also to the internet, it costs $450 million per mission to throw the space shuttle up there. 196 billion over its 30-year life service cycle. So I'm thinking, I was looking for how much it costs to just for the space shuttle to exist every day. And that's probably why we don't have a space shuttle anymore, because it costs a buttload for it to exist, right? You can't just put it in the backyard and not mow the lawn around it. So, it's constantly got a crew and it's constantly being dinked with, and it costs $450 million every time we go up. So I agree with Dano. I think what he was saying is, why not say, hey, here's $450 million for the next person that makes, or for the first person or the best new rocket design, and then pay that money once and have the private sector kicked off, make that the prize or something, or not do
Well,
anything.
that's what SpaceX and all those guys are all about.
Yeah, just let private sector make the prize. Actually, it might be the lottery or something.
Well, I mean, understand, I'm not saying we should give them the money to do this. I think they already have our money to do this. I'm not advocating to give them more.
They can give it back, though. They don't have to do this shit. I agree with Dan. I don't want NASA. I mean, NASA, great. I don't think they're the ones that are the only people on the planet that can figure out how to get shit into space.
For anybody who, whether it was, you were in the armed services, you were in government, or you were a defense contractor, has seen examples of massive waste of money in all aspects of government. They are so inherently inefficient. That's why I push the commercial option.
Yeah, I'll never argue against that statement. That is 100% accurate.
Mandatory bureaucracy, gives a framework for the unscrupulous to hide out and exploit it, and that means money and wasted projects, and there's just so many ways to milk the system while looking like you're trying desperately to keep the system going.
Yep.
Whereas private, it's all about the results and being as efficient and as practical and as innovative as possible is what wins. As opposed to
the difference is
you don't work last year is going to work this year, maybe a couple of tweaks, to make it even, more the same.
And many times the difference is monetarily, you get paid after you produce, not before. With a military project, you get paid to then, okay, now go off and develop this thing. You get paid up front for that. In the commercial world, you get paid after you successfully create something new that the market wants.
All right, we've agreed. Yeah. But now, what are we talking about for a gun to get it back on track? Are we talking a SAT arm, or is anybody considering a rifle for something else? We have rifles for wildcats and bears, right? And is it possible that you'd have a rifle for something like a big ass meteorite, where what are we going to have, robot arms shooting lasers? We don't have that. So what if some meteorite size of a basketball is coming? Are we just going to lose the space shuttle, or I guess the space station? Or are we going to tell the guy inside to grab his 50 BMG?
Oh, that has a predictable path, something like what you're examining. So you can, and they have the ability to move it over. Quite literally.
I'm trying to get a 50 BMG up there. You're trying to use retro rockets or something.
They have them. They have to constantly make minor adjustments.
Well, I think that I think it'll be some kind of something similar to a 50 BMG, but I think it'll probably be in the railgun category that they would use for something like that. I see that as the future of that type of weaponry, just because they get rid of the propellant. That's why.
Now, if you're talking about something bigger than that, like to protect a planet, that's something different. But an incoming object has a predictable path, which anything else that like a man running around or in the army, it's all unpredictable paths. That's why moving the source of the object that might get hit is far easier than trying to hit a basketball that's traveling at 17,000 miles an hour. Think of how difficult it is to shoot an animal from a helicopter while you're flying over it. How you have to lead the projectile. Now imagine they're going 17,000 miles an hour.
Did you say, think about how hard it is to hit an elephant while it's running?
I didn't say an elephant. I said an animal.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that as far as big weapons go, that'll most likely be railgun technology, unless they can figure out some kind of effective light weapon technology. Maybe they already have, we just don't know about it.
Light weapon would be the best because of the speed of which it can project versus anything mechanical.
Again, I'll agree to that statement. I think light weapon I think that would be the end game.
Yeah.
As far as what they would be reaching. I think railgun or rail cannon technology would be your space station to space station battle tech. I think that would also be your planetary defense battle tech. The only thing that I'm not 100% about, and maybe after talking about what they're building these stations out of, maybe handguns are. I mean, maybe we're going to have guys up there with Glocks and 1911s. I don't know.
I mean, it just that what type of weapon will they be? Will they have a mechanical projectile, or will they be some sort of electric? Will they be light based? Well, and primarily when I think of handgun, again, I think of, because you're going to have somebody who eventually is going to lose their nut up there. And before you can get them in handcuffs or some sort of restraints, if they're in a critical position, you may need to do something else, depending on the circumstances. And I'll call it a hand weapon rather than a handgun, because you don't want to damage the ship you're in. It's like shooting a gun in a boat. You don't shoot the bottom of the boat.
Sorry,
the other is acoustic, which is technology that they're using right now for anti-personnel, which would not affect the ship at all, but could definitely disable a person.
I don't know enough about acoustic weaponry to comment.
Lasers. I already seen a thing where I've seen on Instagram, I think, and it's a little thing, looks like a robot ice cube with little legs, so it kind of looks like the robots from War of the Worlds. So it's got this little robot ice cube with little little tripod legs coming out of it, those little bendy legs. So anyway, it's got its own little stand. You point it down, you put something kind of underneath of it, and it's got a laser eye. So it lasers, I don't know, like your phone or like a piece of wood, like a domino. I don't know. It's just for little crafts and shit, but it's a little tiny cutting laser in a robot ice cube. So they already got that for playing around, your mom to make wood grain napkin holders. How come they don't got lasers in space?
Well, primarily energy, but these acoustic, getting back to the acoustic weapon for a moment, they've been using that. I saw a documentary for the Somali pirates that they're using at distance. I mean, this is not science fiction, these acoustic weapons.
Acoustic weapons, can they be focused like a laser?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So that the people behind you are not affected.
Oh, we're talking about inside of the thing again.
Again, I can't argue with that. I honestly don't know enough about acoustic weaponry.
Yeah, because at certain levels, your own person, i.e., your ears, your hearing system, will overload on certain inputs and cause disorientation, as well as
the thing I saw when they were shooting people with it was making them sick to their stomachs, like throwing up and spoiling themselves. And it was bad. Yeah.
Yeah, they use low frequency sound for that.
So here's what you want. You're on the space station, completely sealed environment. Everybody's breathing their own farts, and then you want to use a thing that makes them stomach upset and start pooping everywhere? No.
If this person has lost their money and throwing controls and endangering the crew, you got to do what you got to do.
Oh, come on. There's like a billion other things I'd want to do besides make them start pooping.
You don't think people are sneezing right now?
What?
They're already inhaling each other's biologies through natural, normal functions like a sneeze.
No. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The cells are rancid, that they say. But all I'm saying is I don't need to be adding to all that in an uncontrolled situation.
It's an emergency. That would be the only reason.
So wouldn't a jacked up stun gun be just as effective without the as much of a potential guarantee of making a gross situation grosser?
It might be. The issue would be can it, as long as it doesn't affect the equipment. I think you're absolutely right.
All right. So Dano is insistent on getting to that punchline there. And is anybody else gonna go with the acoustic weaponry?
No. Like I said, I think they'll start using needle guns again, and they'll use spring activated ones, so they don't have to worry about propellant. They'll have box magazines with built-in springs and a group of flechettes in them.
Air.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
I think an acoustic.
Go ahead.
I think an acoustic weapon inside of something which is basically a tin can is too confined of a space, and it's going to bounce off all the walls, and whoever's using that weapon, they're going to get affected by it too, because it's just too confined of a space.
You ever seen one of those things where there's like a wine glass and somebody makes the noise and then the wine glass breaks?
Yep.
How are they supposed to drink wine up there in space after that, Dano?
Well, after that bit of science from G-Webs, I don't know what to say.
All right. Well, how can we get to lasers then? Because yeah, electric, but then there's giant batteries, and they got like big solar panels up there.
They require, the disadvantage of them has always been the immense amount of power they take to get the desired output.
I think
physics in college in the 1980s, that's what they told us when we studied them.
The other problem with laser weapons is the amount of time you'd have to have it focused on a target before it like burnt through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's why
that's the other problem. They work terrible on people because people are mostly water.
Right.
And you got to boil all that water. It's a lot of
But you're just looking to stop the person, i.e. disable. So, fraction of a second to disable the person.
Ooh, I like this Enrique Sonora's non-lethal foam idea.
Oh yeah, I knew a guy back in the day. I keep forgetting about this, but I knew a guy who would buy AKs by the crate, like 12 at a time, 14 depending on what kind of crate it was, and then he was making foams that would disable guns, and specifically AKs. So yeah, there's definitely caustic foams. Well, there must be all kinds of different foams, different characteristics, right?
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand. How is a phone going to stop somebody who's lost their nut?
Oh, come on, mister. I'm going to zap them with a ray that's going to make them upset stomach and poop all over. How's that going to stop?
Technology.
Like, I pooped all over, but now I'm not crazy because I pooped.
We've known about, have been working and put into service for years or decades already versus this phone thing.
Well, wait a minute. There have been quick hardening. There have been quick hardening foams that have been used before and that are current technology that might actually work for what I think G's implying. It wouldn't incapacitate the person in the same sense as what you're talking about with the sound weapon, but it would restrain the person.
Are you saying FOAM foam or PHONE?
F.
No, foam, like shaving foam, FOAM.
I thought you meant phone as in telephone.
I called the guy.
Yeah, we're gonna butt dial him to death.
I didn't understand where you were going with the phone.
Wow. I mean, to be honest with you, the only practical sonic weapon I've ever experienced, I think her name is Diane Feinstein. Every time she gets on the air, I get sick to my stomach and I have to run to the bathroom.
That's a war crime.
Careful, too much exposure to that is
yeah, seriously.
That's up.
But I kind of like G's idea. Go back to the wrist rocket, Wow. Ball bearings in space and all that.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm thinking with a wrist rocket, you got, you can use different kind of projectiles too. Maybe something like an ice ball or something inside.
Just imagine getting hit with a super ball going that fast, knock somebody clean out.
So
Maybe
you're saying that they should take a super ball and just wing it in a wrist rocket in the space shuttle at some point.
You eventually hit everybody.
It would hit like every button just in some order that they don't expect.
And you could shoot a round, like a glass or plastic sphere filled with some kind of knockout gas or something.
Actually, cellulose spheres would work perfect because when they break up, they particleize to harmlessness. That'd be just as efficient or more efficient than the glass. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, easy to pick up without cutting yourself too.
By the way, they have acoustic weapons down to the size of handheld currently. I'm just doing a little looking here on the Google through a company called LRAD, LRAD, which makes both vehicle-mounted, ship-mounted, and handheld acoustic weapons.
Next time at Wanamaker, all of us are going to be like, man, I had to go to the bathroom so many times this time.
Hey, Dana, I'm curious if that site that you're looking at, does it tell you like how many roughly uses you get out of each of these weapons?
It's just discussing them in broad terms. I'm sure that's technology that's either secret or commercially protected, patented, et cetera, et cetera.
All right.
Well, I don't know. G makes a pretty good point. They could weaponize the Tulsa chicken on a stick. That wouldn't be hard. After they eat the chicken, you could stab them with a stick. I mean, not bad.
In fact, CNN had a report in September of 2017. Different types of acoustic weapons are used for crowd control to protect areas of attack and to incapacitate soldiers or civilians. But what do I know?
Man, you're really an advocate for this sound stuff. I think Dan.
Well, the only problem is sound doesn't travel in a vacuum.
Well, there's not a vacuum inside of the space station.
Right.
Oh, I see. So this would be strictly an internal, but obviously you could just get all your guys to suit up, evacuate the station, and whoop, the weapon's no good now. Sorry.
Right. Exactly.
Too easy to circumvent.
Well, yeah. Well, any system that has a single point of failure, like depending on the Russians, to get us up and down, and that's the only way people can get back and forth, is a problem.
Okay, I have a dumb question. I don't know, so I'm just going to ask. With this sound weapon system, a lot of military groups wear noise canceling gear to block out sound other than what they're hearing through their headphones. So is that going to be a way that they circumvent this?
It also changes the how did they describe it?
So
it's your whole body resonates with that stuff. It's not your ears. It's
your jawbone, your jawbone, inside your teeth. So it doesn't matter.
Your heart.
You can put
it's
on.
It's like when you're at a big rock concert and you can actually feel your stomach moving in time with the bass.
Okay, so like I said, I just wanted to make sure I understood that this isn't something that they have to actually be able. It doesn't have to actually go through the ear. It has physical ramifications.
Correct. Yeah, and that base example that Cycle gave is an excellent example of how it can react to your whole body, regardless of your ears.
Somebody actually accidentally sets one of them up at a rock concert. That'd be devastating.
Oh God.
All right, so
then we'll have wattage limits on amplifiers, and can only carry them around at certain times. You need a permit to buy a big one, all that kind of stuff.
What about a rapier? Just a pointy spear or a pointy sword.
I'm pro blades. I'm down with that.
So
but
like
that's actually another. That's another popular theme in science fiction and in space conflict.
Right.
The edge weapon has come back quite a bit.
Got to poke their suit, right? And then boom, you got them. They're done.
Well, if they're outside the craft.
What?
Not if they're inside.
Yeah, but even if they're inside, they're going to bleed out really, really quickly.
But then we have G-Web's main concern, which is a gook all over the place.
Okay, so one little poke of blood, and if you're good, you poke them in like the lungs so that it bleeds out inside of their body. But or else, like Dan was just having them poop everywhere. Like hopefully they got their pants on.
Well, they do have pants on.
Yeah, the crazy man might not have his pants on, or a woman. Let's not be gender biased. A crazy woman might be running around with her pants.
And if it's that time,
Well, killing crazy it with a bleeding wound is, to me, it sounds a lot easier to clean up than.
Well, war's a messy business. I mean, you know.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying it sounds like it's going to be. To me, a blade is much more direct. You're not putting at risk anyone else that might be hit by this sound weapon. A blade seems much more direct and focused.
Oh snap! Dano, buy one of them handheld sound weapons. Pink is putting out a challenge. He says that years of listening to megawatt stereo systems has made him immune to Dano's stun gun. So get one of them stun guns and then zap Pink with it. We'll see if it makes him poop. See if he has pink poop.
well, I'll tell you what. I'll let you check his undies for that.
I ain't looking. We'll just don't take his word for it.
Okay, so I like guns. How about you guys?
All right, whatever. You keep going to the poop gun. So
I thought everybody in space walked around in tighty whities anyway. They all like wear shorts and stuff.
So you guys keep putting off my laser idea because of the power. So what if it was a laser burst? It doesn't need to be a beam. On Earth, we use beams because we plug them into the wall, and we can. But what if it was just a little laser burst that sent out a photon nugget, straight line, but a cutting laser, like enough to melt a suit?
Well, I think that when we brought this up earlier, actually, G, that would be the end game. That would be like where the point where the technology would be pushing to get would be to some type of laser burst or phaser tech.
And the person may not need to be killed.
No, exactly. It just needs to be enough to melt their suit, and usually that energy is going to disperse in melting their suit. So by the time it gets to them, it's just heat, if it even gets through all the way to them. And all it needs to do is melt their suit. And I'm sure people are going to have some kind of like a foam or a duct tape or something to fix their suits up there. But, it's going to take them time to get all through that. And maybe you can just keep shooting them until they run out of patches.
Well, and that kind of brings back Star Trek and how they had the different levels on their weapons. And I would think a light emitting weapon would have the same thing as far as if you're outside the craft, you use one setting. If you're inside the craft, you use another.
And I think a plasma weapon would be more practical because you need to. The problem is it's hard to transfer enough energy and keep it on target long enough with a laser type weapon. Whereas with a plasma weapon, the energy is right there in the plasma discharge.
But it's going to go through the guy and the craft.
Cool, twofer.
I mean, if I remember correctly, plasma is like either the same or higher temperature than the sun. Isn't it incredibly high?
Yeah, it's like the core of the sun. Yeah.
Yeah. Inside an aircraft or inside.
But you only need a little bit of it. You only need a not even a teaspoon. Just like a third of a cubic centimeter. A very small amount.
It's to use a candy. It's being star kissed. What happened to him? He got kissed by a star.
Like I said, I think light weapons would be the end game result. The question is just how many phases of weapons do we need to go through till we get there?
Maybe we'll use gravity weapons and we'll just punch holes in people with gravity waves.
What about an EMP? All you'd have to do is this powerful enough EMP to take out all their electronics, their
Oh yeah, their rebreather systems and shit.
Well, yeah. Again, force.
Kind of hard to direct it though, right? How do you keep it from
your own ship again? Damage to your own ship.
Yeah.
Well, force versus force, EMP, some kind of directed EMP just might be the way they go. But to go back to the situation Dano gave us where we're trying to contain one individual inside our own craft, EMP would be suicide.
Well, no, I see they have EMPs right now that they've been experimenting with in certain cities and cop cars, where a cop car, he has to get within 10 feet of your rear bumper. He hits a button and now your car is disabled. Okay, and it actually works. And so if they can do that without it disabling the cop car, I don't know.
If I remember correctly, that only works because of the voltage that the ignition system uses on most cars because of how high it is.
Are you talking about that soda can looking thing that launches out of the front and attaches to a vehicle?
No, they got one now that doesn't even have to attach. He only has to get within 10 feet of it.
Right. Typically, they throw it on the road, and if the guy goes over it or close enough to it, it will make a connection to the ignition system and short out that out.
Okay. But how does
they just short the guy's car out, or are you saying he does some kind of EMP ray that kills the car's electronics?
It kills the car's electronics.
Yes.
It kills the computer in the car.
Now, if he's inside the spacecraft where he may not be all suited up, I mean, again, outside the aircraft, possibly.
Well, that's my argument, though, is how does the EMP stop a person? The guy's inside. He's not moving because of electronics. That's where I'm confused. Why? How does the EMP?
Well, I'm not
help
talking
us?
about. This would be like for outside the space station or to disable another.
He was talking about guys in spacesuits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the guy in the spacesuit.
Yeah, not guys just hanging around having lunch in the space station. He was talking about guys that were outside in suits that have electronic components in them that are mandatory.
Could
Okay.
be an old astronaut with a pacemaker.
Or just the atmospheric controls of the spacesuit itself would be deactivated. Suddenly, you've got no more oxygen coming in.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
that
and
could be
heating and
problem.
cooling.
Yeah.
Heating and cooling is a big deal because in the sun in space it can be like 300 degrees, and then in the shade in space it's minus 300 degrees, right? So you have a life support system in that suit that's not just oxygen, but it's a heating and air conditioning unit.
Yes.
And you can't navigate. You can't use your little thrusters to move yourself around or nothing, unless you carry a fire extinguisher with you or something.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me as far as outside the space station combat's concerned. Yeah.
Pretty specialized use, but yeah, you get away with that.
The death sounds absolutely horrific. So,
You're either going to freeze to death or melt.
and odds are that'll happen before asphyxiation sets in. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've gone around with this one a little bit. Hopefully, this was kind of topic that people find interesting. Maybe you can take that to the range or the gun shop or the gun show. Have something to BS about. But we had another topic in here from Dead Horse. Want to go with that one still?
If you want, it's up to you, G.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been seeing on social media the last couple days since tonight's Halloween and all that I've seen it from not only private people but from actual gun companies, them making posts saying, remember, it's illegal that if you to use like an airsoft gun or a toy gun or a toy knife, a toy weapon as part of your costume and stuff. And they didn't mention if that's in certain states, if that's some kind of Fed law that I didn't hear about. And then there's also I've seen some debate on like, is it wrong for kids nowadays if they dress up as a policeman or an army guy to have a toy gun as their part of their costume in this day and age? Is that a bad idea? Is that a bad thing? Because when I was a kid, I mean, like we all had toy swords and guns and stuff as part of our costumes, and we'd play army in the streets, and if the police showed up, they'd play army with us, but nowadays everyone's worried about, I guess, getting hurt and stuff. I don't know.
That's why they put the what do you call it? The big orange tips on kids' guns so that you can tell them apart. Not our fault if the kids pry them off.
Yeah, exactly. And but you know, I've seen some posts that say that it's illegal, and I haven't heard about any kind of federal regulation. And maybe some states that I don't live in, you know, might have made some law like that. But I'm just wondering, like, is that some kind of federal law, or do you guys know of states that have laws like that where you can't have an airsoft or a toy gun as part of a Halloween costume?
Well, if that's the law, then my Walmart is breaking that law by selling all that stuff and telling people it's costume material.
Yeah, because
So,
that's what I'm saying. You go to any Walmart and like, yeah, there's swords and reapers and all sorts of stuff on, you know, all the costumes, right?
If it exists, it probably only exists at this point on like some city that clearly none of us have heard of.
yeah, the only place I knew of any rules like this were like at schools, where the schools don't want the kids bringing that stuff if they have a dress-up day.
Right.
Yeah, they don't. They definitely don't want me coming because the last time I dressed up as a cowboy, I carried a real 6-shooter on my hip.
Well, I mean, that'd be my response if I was taking my nieces and nephews out tonight. My response would be, "Oh, it's not a toy gun; it's a real one." Therefore,
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
I'm not
I
breaking
took
the
the
law.
cylinder out of it, so you know I disabled the gun, but that's what I did. You know, when it was in the holster, you couldn't tell.
Yeah, but I mean, that sounds weird.
Is it a bad idea in this day and age that, you know, if your child wants to be an army guy or a police officer or something to, you know, have a weapon as part of their uniform? Should that just be left out nowadays, or
I
no?
think it all depends on how much you want to let the social justice warriors and the PC people control your life.
Yes, I agree.
I think that as long as you take proper basic safety precautions, such as making sure that, to my understanding, they do put some kind of color thing on toy guns nowadays, don't they?
Yes.
Okay, so
And
assuming
that's a
that,
federal law. Yeah, that is a federal law.
all right, so assuming that for everyone out in the world who's not me who can see that that is on the toy, I don't see why I would stop any of my nieces and nephews from having their little cowboy or cowgirl 6-shooter, or if they're an army guy, from having their little rifle as part of their costume. That just seems pointless to me.
If that were to become a thing in our country, I would be of the opinion that our children have seriously lost.
Now, is there a difference between a toy gun and an airsoft gun? Because I've always considered airsoft guns like as a toy gun.
I don't know about all states, but I know some states considered airsoft guns a class of firearm, just like a BB gun.
Yeah, and when they passed that stupid rotary trigger thing, we specifically brought up airsoft guys that do shit like that and paintballers, and they said nope. If they've got them and you could put them on a real gun, then they can't have them either. So they treated them the same as if they were real guns. It was pretty strange. Of course, you know, Connecticut sucks anyway. But
I'm looking at this link you put in here, Dead Horse. I'm I do find this a little curious because they do say the word.
That's just
brandish.
one of them. Yeah, well, that's just one of them, right? That I've seen. So,
Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've always told the kids whenever they have toy guns or anything else, you know, about pointing at people, because you never know how someone's going to take it. So, you know, I don't know if I'd say it's illegal. I'd say it's bad manners to let your kid go around brandishing even toy guns at random people. But
And I guess I would not be shocked if certain California cities did that.
yeah. Airsoft guns, I know, got into a little bit of heat because a lot of airsoft guns are painted to look just like the real thing.
yeah, I don't. You know, Unimarex is a company. How the hell do they get to tell you whether or not it's illegal to brandish your replica in public or not? That's a lot of crap. They don't know that.
Maybe where they're based, the city they're based in, it is.
Yeah, you know they're got to be
that's
California.
Europe. No, they're in like Germany or like they're over in Europe. Yeah, so
Oh,
they're
well, okay, yeah. If you want to,
well, that's
there
a
is
whole
a Humorex USA, but they're mainly out of they're not an American company. That's who makes all of Walther's like 22 long rifle guns now and stuff like that.
Yeah.
oh,
If you,
this is one of those. I'd really like to see. You know, I see this meme with the circle through it and all that, but I don't see a reference You know what I mean?
Well, that's
I
what I'm
don't see.
saying. Like, I've never heard of about it being illegal to, like, I mean, we have kids here who play airsoft up and down our streets and in the front yard and stuff like that. And like, you know, I mean, it's just, and so they're out in public, you know, and just like how we used to play Army as when we were kids, we didn't have guns that really shot anything, but you know, nowadays they do, and still, it's not it's not a problem here. I just don't know if it's the same way in other places.
Yeah, as far as I
Do you
know,
guys have groups of kids that get together in your guys' neighborhoods and play Army still and like shoot each other with airsoft guns and stuff like that? That's like a common thing here.
every time my brother's kids come to my property, they're shooting each other with airsoft guns, or they'll get out the paintball guns and have a war. So I don't know about other people's families, but I know it's perfectly normal on my property.
Yeah, and in California, airsoft laws in California make it illegal for anyone without the express permission of the principal to carry an airsoft gun to a school, and don't brandish it in public unless you're doing it in self-defense. Ha ha ha. It is illegal to draw your airsoft gun in public or threaten to inflict bodily harm on anyone. So basically, they're saying you can't use an airsoft gun like a gun. You know what I mean? It's not that you can't use it as a costume prop. They're saying if you've got an airsoft gun and you're threatening to shoot someone with an airsoft gun, then no, you can't do that.
Well, yeah, but you can't do that with any kind of gun, real, fake, or not. If you threaten to do
Right.
bodily harm to somebody, it's a crime.
That's all I'm saying is it's really it's not because it's an airsoft gun as a prop. It's because an airsoft gun is something that discharges something that could be potentially hazardous to people. You know, you put their eye out or whatever.
All right, so they're saying it's illegal to brandish your airsoft replica in public, so it would be that, like,
Yeah, in California.
well, like you just said, anywhere. If you're going around acting like it's a deadly weapon, that would be illegal. Leave your airsoft.
And believe it or not, New Mexico and Michigan also.
Well, it's a, but I'm just saying. So
Yeah.
keep your airsoft at home, be safe, and keep airsoft safe. So I think they're putting this out there as a message, is like, hey, our airsoft community is worth more than your costume. Leave your airsoft stuff out of your costume so that, you know, it's not an issue. And then that way people aren't going to scrutinize airsoft after Halloween because of some actions or some inaction, you know, just somebody's perception. And that's what I was going to get at. I wanted to go check on the dog, but I wanted to leave with this before I book away for a second. By them saying don't take firearms that look too much like firearms, which is them saying don't take firearms, because as soon as they start looking like stupid or exaggerated, they're not firearms anymore. They're more and more props, right? So by them saying don't take firearms, what they're doing is saying we want parties where there's no firearms around. So we don't want to be at a party where there's a rifle slung because it's a soldier or a police officer or a hunter or a competition shooter or some sort of a parody, like, you know, sharpshooter or something, and they've got a knife and a gun like P226, can't make up his mind. So, you know what I'm saying? There's lots of things that could be gun related, especially in our culture with so many phrases and things that, you know, are part of our culture that have to do with firearms. They're saying, not just in this ad, but in school, whatever, procedures and rules and stuff, they'll say like no guns, right? That's all, I think, bullshit, because it's keeping guns out of our culture, and it's an intentional, you know, change where, I don't know, when you guys first started talking about it, I was first asked the question. When I was a kid, my dad would make, he would take like a broken stock and put a piece of dowel on it or a piece of broomstick or a piece of pipe, you know, whatever was appropriate for the gun, and turn it into a shotgun for me or a rifle. He would take a clothespin and jam it in a 90-degree, and that was the charging handle, paint it all black. And I had a real stock with some sort of a barrel sticking out of it and a charging handle. And I ran around before I had BB guns like a motherfucker with those things constantly. And every single Halloween, I was like, I don't know what I was. I was just some guy carrying around all my toy guns, basically, and wearing, army stuff from whatever army surplus store I was, going to. So anyway, I'm thinking the more and more they keep people out of parties and just walking around and pictures without guns, that's all their agenda. And I think isn't there an and this is the question I guess this whole last thing was leading up to, isn't there an obligation to us to keep guns in Halloween?
Yeah,
Sure.
I would agree with that.
I think so. And I mean, what kind of costume is a police costume without handcuffs, a gun, and a baton, and a badge, stuff like that? I mean, that's
No,
just
that's not a police costume. That's a rent-a-cop outfit.
and it also
Sorry.
makes us as parents deal with our children and make sure that our children know. Well, they should know anyway, right? Responsible adults and responsible 2A parents. We've already taught our kids this. Whether it's a fake gun or a real gun, like you don't point that thing at anybody and stuff, right? Especially, maybe if you're playing army with your friends, but you don't do that to strangers and stuff like that. So, parenting, I think, has a lot to do with that. I can totally see bad parents who don't care what their kids are doing and their kids are out running wild, maybe doing bad things or stuff. But that's not the 2A parents I know. I mean, most 2A parents that I know that are pro-gun, their kids are pretty heavily disciplined in firearms and gun safety, and they won't even point an airsoft or a cap gun at somebody, let alone a real gun.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat on that.
Yeah, and let's face it, there are some costumes where the firearm is a static element of the costume and never has to come out of a holster. Like you said, if you're a cowboy or a police officer or that kind of thing. But then there's other costumes, like if you want to be a Marine or a sniper or something like that, and you want to take your airsoft AR-15 and you're going to wear it. You're not going to wear it strapped the whole time. I mean, eventually you're going to hold it at low ready or whatever. But that, again, it's all this. If we get all the guns out of sight of the culture, then people won't care when we take them away from everybody.
I think this is how we brainwash kids. Well, not we, but I think this is how they are brainwashing kids to teach them at an early age that guns are evil and scary and bad.
Guns must be bad. I can't carry one around on Halloween.
I can't even carry a toy gun, right?
There are rules. So, right? I mean, that's all it takes. It doesn't even matter what the rules are. There are rules for this, comma, so, ... The fact that the government even has to put attention at it is the problem. They don't say, oh, well, don't be a bartender because there's drunk driving. Oh, you're going to be a truck driver? Well, don't be a truck driver who's on speed or meth or something, because that's an issue. Like, oh, you're going to be a construction worker? Well, don't be a construction worker that works with lead. I mean, all of a sudden it's guns. What else is there that they let them have their boobs hanging out? You can be all kinds of whatever. What am I trying to say? Puns or whatever. How you dress up as a phrase or whatever. That can be as rude or as lewd. That's congratulated. But guns, come on. You could be a serial killer. You can be all kinds of real or imagined.
Oh, all sorts of bloody and gory and horrific kind of stuff, right? With guts hanging out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Knife, big bloody knife, a cleaver, a chainsaw, a gun. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, Halloween has turned. My wife's heard me say this 1,000 times, but Halloween, for the most part, has turned into how gory can we get or how slutty can we get, and they're worried about toy guns. I think we have other issues that are a little more concerning than whether or not a kid dresses as a cowboy and has an accurate sharpshooter sitting, or a 6-shooter in the holster, or whether somebody wants to go as a Marine and wants to walk around with their fake M16. Who cares? That should be something that they're allowed to do. And it's a shame that it's even become an argument in the culture that we have to have about it.
I think it's a shame when we see actual gun companies posting this kind of stuff, though. That's what really, if someone wants to have their own personal opinion, I'm totally okay with that. But when it's an actual gun company that makes real and fake firearms, right? That's a sad day when they're out there basically telling our kids like, oh, guns are evil and scary, don't take it.
Well, no, I don't. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I really think that last line is the key. They're saying keep airsoft safe. They know they're persecuted. They know that people are going to grab an airsoft gun because it's cheaper, lighter, legal to walk around with, and then they're going to do dumb stuff, and then somebody's going to potentially blame the airsoft. It pokes me in the eye. There's a million things that could happen. So I think that's the key, though, is that they're saying keep airsoft safe. They're saying that as like, hey, you're representing our industry. Like, don't be a Yahoo out there this Halloween. And I think they could have done it better. If that's truly the case, if I'm right, they could have done it way better than obviously getting it to where you think that they're saying guns are bad. Because I don't think they're saying guns are bad.
I'll agree with you, G. I think it's a poorly worded PSA.
Yeah, and I can see that. It could definitely be just, and they are European, so I can see that.
Well, yeah, and sure, like, if somebody walks up to your house, in a full battle rig with an M16, with something that looks like an M16, of course you're not going to consider the fact that it's Halloween and it might be a costume. You're just going to open fire on that guy right away, right?
You're going to jump away. Terrorist. Yeah, like, oh, there was a bunch of kids trick-or-treating and a terrorist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's some guy out there right now screaming back, "Honey, get my good PBR hat. I got Osama," because he doesn't understand costumes.
See, my opinion is if more people carried real guns, then the people carrying fake guns would become a self-limiting problem.
Well,
because they'd end up getting their asses shot off.
How many open carry states do we actually have? I'm just curious.
Well, I'm not talking open carry. I'm just saying if you carried it, if you conceal carry or whatever, the people that are trying to use airsoft guns to rob banks and hold up liquor stores and shit like that, they become much less of a problem if everybody else around them is carrying real hardware.
Well, I mean, and that's just true of crime in general.
Yeah.
45 states have open carry.
Hold on. Did you already? I was in there petting the dog. Were you guys already talk about the comments that came through here?
Not yet.
Right. Whose comments?
So we talked about this, whatever this is, infographic.
The PSA, yeah.
Right, and it says it's illegal to brandish your firearms, blah, 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 keep airsoft safe. So then Dead Horse comes along and says, I don't know if these are in the right order or how they do it here. What is this? See, I don't know how they do this order. On a phone, you can sort it by different ways. I'm going to assume this is.
I can already see the not worth a kid dying comment.
Yeah, so friendly reminder, it's a really bad idea. Only a weak society. So Dead Horse comes along, only a weak and fearful society is it a bad idea. We used to run around with tons of guns. And then this guy says, blah, 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 argue over it for all eternity. Let's play it safe. Carry on a toy gun, more important than somebody's life. But who said it? Dog, that, come on, it's Halloween, right? So, Dead Horse says, and this is how we teach our kids guns are bad. Don't take your evil, scary, fake toy guns with you as part of your costume because some tax collector might kill you. Goes, we're not a hill worth a kid dying on. And again, I know this was Umrek saying it, like agreeing with that other guy. So this is more than just, hey, let's post this. But no, this is them like really being worried about kids dying. So again, is there ever been an instance of a kid dying on Halloween because a cop, a police officer, was like, "Oh yeah, there was all these little trick or treaters and the shortest Osama I've ever seen." So I took them out.
Far greater danger that happens every year is the kids that get killed or injured running across the street in front of a car and get hit.
Oh yeah,
The
right.
old-
So their costumes. Well, there was like a lot of concern about the razor blade and apple, and as far as I understand, that's a Snopes. There's like no, that's never actually happened. No, the whole
They found meth and pixie sticks this year. That's the only one I've really heard.
that you've heard. So go to Snopes and see if it's a legit, because there's always something that somebody heard of a thing or they heard of a thing. That's what I'm saying. That's what Halloween is. It's just fuck with kids. So anyway, nobody wants to eat a candy apple. Nobody wants to eat a popcorn ball. So that's why those people quit putting those things out. But it's easy enough to say, oh, they quit giving those things out because so and so was putting razor blades in them. Anyhow, so there's this perception that kids are going to die, and again, it's Halloween. Like, what kind of cop is just slaughtering people on Halloween because they have guns on?
I want to touch on something about kids dying with toy guns, because there's been a couple incidences in the last like 10 years that kind of sort of come to mind. And in each of those incidences, we've been lucky enough to have video of the incident. And in each incident, none of the kids were, let's be honest, innocent in their actions or how they reacted when the police approached them and told them to put it down.
Oh, no. There's this one I can think of it's years ago now, maybe 2 years ago, where some kid's basically standing there next to what do they call them, roofs at a forest preserve? You're just standing next to this roof, whatever, like picnic benches underneath of it. And this cop just comes flying up out of nowhere. There might have been two cops in the car. Comes flying up out of nowhere, throws on his brakes, like skids to a stop, just right in front of this kid who's just standing there. And then the other cop jumps out and shoots him. And, we don't know what happened before that, but, the part that we see there on the video is like the kid's just standing there. And they come flying up and shoot him.
And I don't know any kids that really trick or treat by themselves anymore. No. Especially now today's age. So it's usually a group, and they're gonna have a bunch of different costumes, right? And a lot of times, especially if it's any kind of younger kid, like under the age of like maybe 12 or 11 or something, then there's usually a parent in that group and stuff like that. And I don't think it's a real thing. I don't think that's a thing that actually happens on Halloween, is that kids are getting killed because they have a toy gun or a toy knife or something like that. I just don't think that's a real thing.
Oh, hold on.
The sheer unreasonableness of it, the whole thing. There are so many mitigating circumstances with Halloween, and for these guys to say, "Oh yeah, dangerous Halloween, be home, keep stuff safe," it's like, what are you, a 2-year-old?
All right,
that makes no sense to me at all.
Happy Estla, right? LOL. I'm sure that in countries where firearms are legal and over the counter, to walk with a replica airsoft is a bad idea, with an exclamation mark. Let's hope that your country will be able to free itself from the free circulation of arms and finally become civilized.
Right, the guy's just totally anti-gun.
Fuck you uncivilized motherfuckers.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you right now, armed societies that I've been in have always been the most civil. It's the unarmed ones I've been in that have been the most savage.
That guy, maybe he's just stirring the pot. He might just be stirring the pot. So this guy says not even at a Comic Con. So I can almost understand that, because you'd be walking through a city and somebody might not have any idea that there's a Comic Con going on and call the police on you. But going around on Halloween, I think that there should be something, some sort of let's all hide our guns on Halloween.
Well, most Comic Cons and stuff banned weapons a couple of years ago just because of people beating each other with blunt object weapons they made. So that's kind of a blanket statement.
Well, I don't know, but they're also not kids. Those are a bunch of old people doing their weird things at this point.
Yeah, and the whole point of Comic-Con is to be as accurate as possible. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that costuming and shit is judged on is
Only
does
people,
it look like the real thing?
but only people that are trying to win a contest. Some people just want to participate and be there wearing something more fun than their regular clothes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
wear a blue shirt instead of the fanciest version of the costume. But at the same time, if they own airsoft stuff, I don't think they should be shunned. And again, if you're putting together a shitty Laura Croft costume and it's got two of the wrong models, but they're still, pistols, then let her wear that. I don't know why.
Just for yucks, yeah. You're just doing it for yucks.
Yeah, and then what you're going to say again, like whatever you were saying before with the Halloween, you're going to say that some chick, wearing this like crazy getup that almost looks cartoonish is going to be the terrorist. Like cops are going to jump to that conclusion.
No.
I think there's again a lot of this like, hey, let's err on the side of caution so much that we agree to this. This is engineered. This isn't like and some gun guy came along and said, hey, let's just start harassing people let's shame people because they like their firearms and want to express, have their firearms be part of their Halloween costume. So, that wasn't a gun related thing. That was inspired by watching some news article on TV or on the radio where they were shaming guns and gun owners let their kids go around with guns and it scares people and nobody wants to come to the door and see a bunch of people with guns. It scares them because again they can't remember that it's Halloween. They're coming to the door to feed kids. They just thought they were coming to the door and all of a sudden there's guns. And that's where the gun people fall for that bullshit line of quote unquote reasoning, and that's where they unknowingly participate in that fucking agenda.
And look what they attracted. Look what they attracted in the comments. The first thing they did was attract the gun grabbers, the people that think a civilized society there wouldn't be any guns around anyway, right?
True.
So it's another case of you give them an inch and they take a frickin' mile. These guys say, hey, let's not get the airsoft folks in trouble by doing airsoft stuff. And the guy in the comments says, yeah, and you shouldn't have any guns anyway to start with. You know what I mean? You can't.
That's
there's
exactly
no such thing as reasonable.
That's exactly what I was trying to get to when G. Webs had mentioned, because the philosophy of err on the side of caution is extremely common. And people who believe in that in its totality are also the same ones to believe, and that's exactly why there should be no guns, period.
Well, I like a quote that I heard when I was a teenager. Always err on the side of freedom. So forget caution. Let's err on the side of freedom and rights. So yeah, if your kid dressed up like a soldier and has a toy gun to go with their costume, by all means, let them go with it.
We have multiple generations sold on the concept of error on the side of caution. I mean, I've heard that from people of all ages.
Yeah, but that's as an individual, not as a society. It's one thing for an individual to say, I'm going to be cautious and teach my kids to be cautious. It's another thing for people to say, and you have to be as cautious as I am too.
But it
all comes down to the individual. Stop telling me that I have to act like you. Because that's where we get in trouble. I don't care how you act, as long as you don't tell me how I have to act. And that's what this is all coming down to.
And then they go right back to, but Bill, let's err on the side of caution.
No, let's not.
But they believe in that wholeheartedly. They'll come right back to it. It doesn't, because it demands no facts to back up. It's just simply a belief by a emotion. But let's be reasonable. Let's use common sense. Can't we err on the side of caution? And
no, because let's decide who decides what caution is, who decides what common sense is. You can have these kinds of arguments with these people,
right? But they'll come back with, well, that's you're not being reasonable. You're not even trying to use common sense. And I'm not proposing this. I'm just saying this is what I hear over and over and over again. It's like circular reasoning with these people.
It all comes down to shaming. You don't act like me, so you're unreasonable. You don't do what I want you to do, so you're deplorable.
Yeah.
You know, and I refuse to get dragged into things like that.
Right on.
I don't have those kind of arguments with people anymore because you can't win.
We kind of going off topic, which is fine.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think there's some ways to parry that. Just off, you know, I haven't recently been thinking about it, but you know, in the past when we've talked about topics like that, it's been more of an issue after a big situation, which is actually a bad time to try to come up with new strategies. That's when we should be, you know, evaluating our strategies. Who's knocking their mic around? But
Not me.
my thing has been a lot to not depend on self-defense and not to fall into their ambush or whatever. And it's not as though the person that we might be having the talk with or the discussion, you know, knows that they're part of an ambush. It's just that they're only going off about it because they've been called to action as part of a larger strategy ambush type of thing. And in a general, let's attack gun ownership every time a tragedy or an atrocity, excuse me, happens with a firearm, right? So anyway, what I would say is if they're going to suggest that all firearms be banned, then talk about the consequences or the results of when you have firearms and a lethal consequence to law breaking, violent action. Then what happens when you remove that consequence or you remove that potential for that lethal consequence? And then I think what that might do is not necessarily sell them into being pro-gun, but if it knocks them off of their, you know, their programmed plan of attack, they've only got a 3-step attack. Like there should be no guns. Pause and wait for response, and then say, you know, XYZ, like, oh, you don't even care about the children. Pause, wait for response, and then, you know, you hate or whatever, you know, then that's the end of their little thing. So if you don't do what they're expecting, then I think you might, well, I've talked about it before, I think you got a chance of actually challenging them to then go back to wherever it is they get their data from, wherever they feed from, and then to start scrutinizing where do I get a rebuttal for this? And then now they're in the game. Like they have to now start looking stuff up. And any reasonable person, once they start looking at their side and the numbers, I don't know, it's possible that their numbers are just so screwed that, you know, they could be on that side for a while. But I suspect anybody who really starts digging into it, it's really, really tough. They have to pick the outliers and they have to pick specific, like, you know, segments of time in order to just, you know, to justify some of their positions on stuff, you know, as far as statistics and things. So anyway, that's, I would say, is there's got to be ways that we can take them from that. You know, there should be no guns kind of 3-step, and just give them something they side, you know, a screwball, something they're not expecting.
Oh, and I'd like to add something to that, G, and that's that learn to recognize when you're talking to a zealot, because when you do something like G's talking about, where you're able to put forward information and then they just insist upon repeating the same talking point, and they're showing you that there's nothing you can say to have a conversation, it's okay to walk away.
Welcome to every family gathering I've ever been to.
Well, that's a good point. I was going to say it's probably better to walk away for your sanity and for just so you don't waste your time. But if
yeah. Well, I've watched so many gun guys lose their cool because they think that they're going to get through to somebody who's a zealot, and it's just like, you know, at the end of the day, just walk away. It's not worth your energy. It's not worth your stress. Save that so that way you don't become so jaded that when you do have the opportunity to talk to someone who's willing to listen, that you're not so jaded from dealing with those other people. That's all. Damn, I didn't mean to kill the chat there.
My letter will start off, Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this before the holidays because I need to just walk away, as I've been told by my friends, my new internet friends on the internet. I need to just step away. So have a good life. Goodbye.
No, with family, I just recommend not broaching the topic.
You make it sound like that's a bad thing. And I have to tell you, I have had toxic relatives, and I have totally cut them off. And that's not a bad thing.
Well, if it was a sideways relative, that's one thing. A brother, an uncle, an aunt, a cousin.
Dano, my best advice to you is understand my mom's somebody who is a bleeding heart liberal. And me and my mother get along solely because we have an understanding that I won't upset her by saying what I believe when it comes to those topics, and she won't bring them up and force what she believes on me. And that's how we get along.
That's reasonable.
Or do you got somebody that won't leave it lie?
Oh, I leave it lie because, like, as an example, I go visit, TV's on, and it happens to be news time, and this is traditional, oh, it's 6 o'clock, we watch the news. Flip on the news, and the first thing that comes up, such and such was shot today. Okay, I know, here it comes.
But just to say it, and you got to sit there and deal with it, or like, oh, you're here, so let me
it'll be one of those baiting comments like, I can't believe that they allowed this man to have a gun, and just like throw it out there, like not directly to me, but just like throw it out to the group that's watching the TV or some variation thereof.
Yeah, I watched a thing a long time ago about you can go back when you go return, and it's a little different for you. You're a lot closer, but for me, it was more of once or a couple times a year I would go back to where at worst I came from, and it was basically you kind of I noticed that I would go back and become son, grandson, friend kind of thing, as opposed to whatever the fuck I'd be started to do on my own. So anyway, there's a certain amount of like you got to figure out when to just be Dano when you go back there, and they're going to want to do what they are used to
yeah, it's just I find it very hard not to be the person that I am.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Go back to being Danny or whatever either, right? Just like, okay, this is going to take 35 minutes, and then or like I say, maybe have like just a list of stuff that's, well, what about them Dodgers or whatever the fuck they're
not even if you know that that's a situation, and this is a classic example of that kind of stuff, and the TV's coming on at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is when you go for a walk, you take the dog for a walk, you say, hey, I'll see you guys in a half hour, 40 minutes, and now they got nobody to bounce that shit off of.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Time for a beer run.
You don't have to engage. The important thing is you don't have to engage. And you don't have to just sit there and take it. You can actively say, I know this is coming. I'll see you guys in a half hour. Or an hour, or however long your nightly news goes. So just a suggestion. That if you want to get along, you don't have to go along to get along. You just have to know when to absent yourself and take yourself off the conversation, because it's a no-win situation. They're not going to change their minds. So why put anybody through the stress of that? No, and they probably think they're doing you a favor by trying to convince you the other way. And there's nothing you can do about that.
So is this like a whole bunch of series of things, or is it just the gun thing? Like, is it? Oh, hell!
It's just the gun thing. Like I had my father asked me, and it's my mother and my father asked me just a couple of months ago. He says, "So what is it about guns that you like so much?" Now we've had this conversation in different forms and shapes many times over the years. And the reason it came up is because I was taking that class outside of St. Louis. And so I went and I explained to him, gave him the same explanation I've given to him another time, but because it's something that it's like explaining, why do you like peanut butter and jelly? If you don't like peanut butter and jelly, I can't explain it in a way that's going to make you like peanut butter and jelly.
Or like if you were into cars and you were like, I'm going to some other state, city in some other state for the weekend to experience my enjoyment of cars. And then
I'm going to the races, or I'm going to a rally.
Yeah, they're going to be like, I don't understand that, so you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where you just have to agree to disagree. And when they come up to you and say, tell me why, it's perfectly okay for you to say, I've explained this as best I could. I'm not going to have this conversation again.
Yeah, like, I don't think I explained this very well. Maybe there's some, maybe we can take you out. That's another thing.
I think my dad said early Alzheimer's, because I literally said, Dad, we've talked about this before and more than once. I'm not sure what else I can really add to it. He says, well, just tell me one more time.
Oh, that's a whole nother ball of wax, brother. I've been through that. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, we're not responsible for solving the parents' dementia issues.
Hold on. If something is that a strategy though, is it one of those things like, so how come you like this girl, or how come you like this girl? How come they didn't like her, kind of thing? Like, is that the strategy? Like, ask you 16 times, and that's his way of saying, I'm still not satisfied with your answer. Change your habits.
Basically.
Yeah, okay. That doesn't mean it's dementia. That just means that's his way of saying, like, I'm still going to bug you about this because I don't like it, right?
But that's why you have to point it out in such a way that makes it clear that you understand what's going on. You don't play the game of, okay, let me run tape number 5 for you again. You say, I'm not going to have this conversation.
Yeah.
That's pretty much my thing, too. But I don't really
because if you're honest with people and you tell them, like, my sister used to drag me to all kinds of shit, and I would make excuses, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. And finally, I just started telling her, I don't like doing that stuff. Stop asking me to go there. If you want to ask me about other stuff, fine, and we'll do it on a thing-by-thing basis. And my life got so much simpler because I didn't feel bad about lying about the fact that I wasn't really busy or any of that shit. And I found it was a much better relationship to just be upfront and say, no, the next time you want me to go to watch people drumming, remember, I don't like that, and I'm probably going to say no.
Well, I didn't mean to steer off the conversation.
Well, it sort of comes around to how do you deal with people that have different attitudes than you about firearms, and
Yeah.
Plus,
so dress up like a stormtrooper and carry a rifle in next time at Halloween and see what happens.
There you go.
Or get your brown vest. The next time you go for Thanksgiving, get your brown vest and your hat with the big buckle on it, and show up with that.
Yep. Or just get a big orange chip for a real rifle.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
It's just a toy.
Get a real AR-15 and paint the end of the muzzle device orange.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
so we're talking about that in Matt's chat earlier. What do you think as far as that going into any other weapon territory? In other words, needing to be registered because it's trying to look like something that's not a firearm.
I think I've already seen a statement somewhere, and granted, this was years ago, and I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I already heard a statement or read a statement from the ATF saying that was like illegal, like that you can't do that. That you can't paint the your flash hider orange on your AR-15. I'm pretty sure I read something about that a couple years. I don't know if that stood up. I don't know if that's even a thing.
It would make sense because they basically said in some places it's even a law that you should, for safety or for concern or whatever, make the muzzle, the end of the barrel orange on a toy so that little kids don't have to worry about it. And
it's a federal law that all of the imported airsoft guns have that orange tip, because there was a case where an airsoft shop got raided by the ATF because they were selling airsoft guns from China without the orange tip.
Well, all right, but that's to sell them and to take possession, maybe, but probably just to sell them. Once you own it, it's your property. You do what you want. There's no law that says you have to have it federally.
Well,
So
I don't. To try to address your question that you're asking here, G, I don't know if this is a California thing or if this is a federal thing, and I've never bothered to look it up because I just knew it was the rule I had to live under. You may not take any real firearm and modify it in any way that would imply that it is not a functioning firearm.
right, that's what I'm saying. So if you were to take something that is a fake firearm like an airsoft that has to be differentiated by the orange tip and then emulate that situation, I think that would classify as a firearm trying to look like a not firearm and therefore would need to be registered as any other weapon.
I would say that is accurate.
For the $5 it costs for the tax stamp, I think it'd be better to play it safe than sorry if for some reason that's what you wanted to do.
No. If someone were, no, there's no way to do that. You'd have to get a receiver. But anyway, it's $200 to create another weapon. It's $5 to transfer it. So if an SOT were to create it for you, you'd have to create that gun, and you'd have to buy that whole gun just to be able to get it for the $5. So he can create it, do whatever the Form 3 is or whatever it is, and then, it's a gun, and then sell it to you or transfer it to you. But if you create it, then it's $200.
That kind of like I've seen a lot of those Glocks being Cerakoted up to look like the old Nintendo Zapper gun and stuff like that. So that kind of
I don't know.
That's good for a lot of things.
That's one of those things I'm not going to comment on their Facebook, on their Instagram or something. But yeah, I'm wondering about that.
Well, my understanding about with all like the crazy Glocks and stuff you're talking about, because I wondered about that a little bit. And when I was asking around about it, the answer I received was that there's somewhere you talk about how all toy guns, you guys said the color's orange, have to have that orange tip. That's why you're not seeing that type of tip put on any of these Glocks and stuff, is because that's kind of where the distinction is. There's certain designators that are designed to say that this is a non-operable / toy firearm versus cosmetic features that can be applied to any gun. That was my understanding.
Yeah, that would make some sense, but the Nintendo thing doesn't have an orange tip, does it? Oh, wait, it does.
No, it doesn't.
It used to be gray, but then they changed it to the handle, and part of the barrel of the gun was all orange later on. But originally there was no orange on the Zapper. But later on they pretty much made that whole Zapper orange.
Did they? I was not aware of that.
So many police were busting into kids' basements and like grandma's back rooms and being like, "Oh, this kid's got a gun," and shooting them. That was happening a lot back in the 80s. All right, so is Dano still in here? Dano,
Yeah.
you still?
No, I'm here.
All right. Oh yeah, that's right.
So there's the original, and then there's the orange one.
I didn't even think about that. Have you listened to the James Yeager's podcast?
You mean his most recent, or you mean any of them?
Any of them?
I've listened to a couple minutes of them. I've never heard a whole one.
Has anybody else listened to James Yeager's podcast?
Never.
No.
All right. So if you're one of the people that have already judged James Yeager based off of YouTube videos, then don't even listen to this show because you're really closed-minded. James Yeager is one of the most authentic human beings I've met ever. He's a cool dude, and he's I can't even imagine a more true patriot. So, he's doing his thing, and he was chief of police for a minute. He did some undercover stuff for a minute. He was what do they call a contractor for a bit. He started taking classes in I think the 90s, in early 90s, and then started being an instructor. And ever since then, he's like gone out and taken more classes and brought his those kernels to his curriculum, very Jeet Kune Do like. In other words, it takes the essence or the kernels of different techniques and places and puts them all together. He emphasizes mindset and knowledge over gear and tactics. So really freaking cool dude. And because he's getting jacked around on the YouTube, and the YouTube was, I imagine, interesting for him. He's been in a movie. He's probably written stuff. I know he did DVDs way before the internet was, fast enough to deal with video. He's had a forum. He's been online on other forums since like the 90s. So he's savvy and he's a pretty smart dude. And, YouTube, I think was, like I said, I think was fun for him and he thrived on it. And when YouTube pulled the plug on his channel for whatever reasons it was, he looked for other sources. And right at that point, he started doing this podcast. So December of 17. So, not quite a year ago. And this first one, I don't know if I listened to the first one. I think I might have started listening to 3 or 4 and just listened to occasional ones here and there. I know James for a while now, and I don't watch any of his videos or anything, but I've, been to plenty of his classes. So I've heard him talk about stuff for a long time, and he's got a unique, cadence and rhythm, and he's got some stories and stuff that he likes to tell. And, I've heard some of the stuff. But so I've been kind of picking through here, thinking I've heard some of this stuff before, or at least, I'm assuming. But anyway, so I'm picking through here, and some of these things, like the people he interviews, are insane. Like they're legit. Like I say, he's taken a lot of classes, and when there's somebody who's also an authentic human being, like you can usually use a barometer the barometer I use to tell if somebody's legit or not is how Jaeger deals with them. So Jaeger doesn't deal with people that are fake. Like if you're just an empty shell of a human, he'll just keep moving. Like so he's talks to some people who are legit, and these interviews with them are like very casual people that have very not exact but comparable experience levels. And man, these are some of the coolest. I don't know if you want to call them. They're just conversations. It's James Jaeger too, so I probably emulate his style to some extent of not putting a lot of emphasis on production or structure and just kind of kicking it and doing it. But he's definitely good at that. And these things are great. So I can't recommend them enough. Some of them are like 6 minutes long. Some of them are 47 minutes long.
Where do you get the feed from?
Well, I'm giving you the link right now.
And I ask that only because I don't think those are up on YouTube. At least some of the ones I've seen.
Just audio. And I think he started this after he got kicked off of YouTube. I think it's just on his website. It's on MFCEO, motherfucking CEO Jaeger.
Because he does a once a week thing that he still does, but that's not it.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what this is. Some of them are him, and some of them are him and some other guy. They're super awesome, and because they're just kind of conversations with his friends, but with a little bit of like structure, like let's talk about the first time you did this, or let's talk about the opening of your school. Just super neat recollections of the old days. And man, there's so much information in here. I've already grabbed off of just maybe 4 of them. And anyway, that's not really a Gun Channels member that I don't think James ever been on Gun Channels. But again, if you're completely made up your mind on Jaeger based off of some YouTube videos, I mean, he's very got his hand. He's got his what am I trying to say? Oars in the water, many oars in the water. YouTube was just one of them, and very legit training as well. I mean, Dano, you're not the biggest fan after getting shot in the chest, all that, but you still seem to.
I do have a issue, but it's not the sort of thing that it would interfere with me recommending taking training from Tactical Response. In fact, I had posted a message over on gunchannels.com earlier today. I had received an email because I am a multi-alum over there. And they are running, and I believe it's all of 2019, but $100 off on Fighting Pistol, which is kind of like their they're a gateway class to everything else. And the trying to find the discount code. So if you sign up for it online, just use the discount code, all one word, first time student. All one word. Don't worry about capitalization. Just make sure it's all one word, and you should get $100 off on what Fighting Pistol. I know last year it was $500, and it's been $500 for a number of years. I don't know if the price is going up or not, or if it's still $500. But if you're ever taking a class there, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I cut you off. Go ahead.
If you've never taken a class there, and I would really encourage you, if you're ever going to take a class from him, take the Fighting Pistol. That's the class I would suggest you take. Is why not get $100 off?
All right. So just, and now you're not getting paid a dime. You could probably go to a class for free if you wanted, right?
Probably.
Yeah, and I can go to class for free anytime I want. So I don't know if we're getting paid, but that I can go to classes whether or not I say this or not. Let me put it that way. Does that mean I'm not getting paid? I don't know. But would you? I'm asking Dano. Would you say that that's worth the $500? The knowledge and the experience that you gain.
The lectures alone were worth the $500 I paid, and I paid for every class I took down there.
And again, we're not. I guess we're just kind of turning this into an impromptu commercial for tactical response. But first off, I'm going to put a disclaimer. This is tactical response specifically. There's other classes like Asada U who would be similar level, but this is specifically tactical response. I mean, it blows away some of the other stuff that's just all tactics or just all technique. His mindset part is necessary, you would think, or I would suggest. But is that are you in agreement?
Oh, very much so. It helped me put in order what I kind of thought was the case, but I hadn't really fully thought it out as far as the priority of what should come first above all else, and then what would be number two, and what's last, which is gear, doodads. That's always going to be last.
And we're saying it kind of summarizing what 2+ days of experience and knowledge and information dump, as well as getting out and practicing some of the skill sets and stuff. So, we're doing a poor job of it here, but anyway, I guess I started that whole thing off. If you're going to already give an opinion of the Jaeger and you've never met the guy and you're just basing off of YouTube videos, hopefully you'll take some of these other endorsements that he's definitely a alpha dude or whatever, and he's going to do whatever he's going to do, and that means some people are going to get rubbed the wrong way. But if you can either ignore that or get on his good side and be down with that, or just be interested in watching a guy be cool like that, then just comfortable being like that and being comfortable having not everybody love him. It's just a super interesting dude to be around. But the classes are the essence. They're literally the essence of all the other good stuff that's out there. And he has such an excellent relationship with people that nobody considers it like, oh, you're stealing my thing. Like, no, they're all sort of like a martial art or an artist, really. And they're kind of developing this stuff. Anyway, some of these interviews were ultimately interesting because some of these other guys who are legendary in the field of gunfighting or training kind of all have that same mindset, but they all come at it from just a little bit different angle, and of course different experiences, and super neat. So having somebody like James is not just, even myself, like I'm kind of aware a little bit. I wouldn't know what questions to ask, but these guys know their each other's stories, so they know how to get something out of somebody by prompting them for the piece that they're looking for out of a story or whatever. So really, really neat, filling in a lot of gaps. I can't wait to go through and listen to some of these podcasts again with some, like a notebook or something, just kind of piece together some of the stuff I've been curious about over the years. So anyway, it's send a link out there and give it a shot sometime. That was a free plug for tactical response.
I heard his from several people, his medical classes are second to none.
Yeah, Yeah,
So you know, on the medical classes, the very first time I was down there, a medical class was finishing, and some of those students were also in my the first class I took down there, which was fighting pistol, and so I got a lot of time to ask them about that medical class. And James, nor do any of his normal cadre, do not teach that class. They have an outside person come in that does that full time. So you're not getting somebody that, 95% of the time is doing guns and then 5% of the time whips together a medical class. That's not what it is.
All right. Well, their curriculum is designed that anybody can teach them. It's not the instructor that's the essence of it. It's the curriculum and the whatever this, the what do you call it when the schedule? What do you call it when you go? Anyway,
yeah, and things may have changed. This was 2017. So what was true, now versus, let's say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I have no idea.
Well, that's true. I took it in 14 or something, 15, I don't remember. So anyway, their medical class is awesome. I'm a paramedic. I completed whatever paramedic school back in the day, and then beyond that went to be a nationally registered paramedic. Not a paramedic. What am I fucking saying? EMT. Fucking paramedics, way more school. Sorry, EMT. So I've experienced whatever's that 7-8 hours worth semester, whatever. Well, it's a pretty major class. It's like a lot of info. Nothing like the emergency medical from tactical response. I've done all different kinds of medical classes over the years, supplements and things, and stuff before doing the EMT stuff, and their medical is way better than anybody else's, anything close.
Right. And what I was going to follow on with is every person I talked to, whether it was just for that one night and they were leaving, or whether it was students that were continuing on into my class, is they felt that the medical class was absolutely outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these students were first-time students. Some of them were alumni. Some of them had taken many classes at other locations, but it was their first time to tactical response. And all of them were highly impressed with the medical class offered there.
Can I touch on this just for a second?
Yes.
It's on topic, but slightly off. I've never worked with James Yeager's medical class or anything with Yeager, so I can't speak to that, but I do hear highly of his program. What I would like to say about other people is first aid, medical classes, all that kind of stuff is arguably just as important, if not arguably more useful a lot of times than what a lot of people think about when they think about training. Everybody thinks about running and gunning, but that medical aspect is probably one of the most useful and in many cases undervalued aspect of it. And one great thing about a medical class that I think would benefit a lot of people is you can even get people who aren't necessarily full gung-ho pro 2A to be interested in taking a medical class with you. And it could be that gateway for you. And even something that maybe you and someone you'll never see eye to eye about guns, but if you have that in common, it gives you a bridge.
That's definitely advice, but not for Jaegers. You're pulling guns in Jaeger's class. You got to bring a gun to Jaeger's medical class.
No, I just meant in general, G. That's like I said, it's on topic but off.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll just throw out there is just because it relates to my own personal experiences. I've taken like the Red Cross classes and things like that for emergency health, and those are really what I'll call boo-boo kit kind of classes for all practical purposes, with the exception of CPR. It's in no way comparable to the breadth and depth of these types of classes that they're offering down there.
Also, since we're talking about it and he's got all these free plugs today, did you notice that he's doing a family one now?
Yes, I did. I cannot talk about it because I did not read that section closely because I don't necessarily have a family plan. But yes, they also have another class. I don't have my email opened up what called after the fight, because that's they have one class called the fight, which is their force on force sort of a thing.
No, it's not called after the fight. I think that implies it might be something after a lethal force incident. It's an additional class that you would take, like the fight part 2, from what I understand.
Yeah, I may have misquoted the
But
class.
no, I just didn't want if anybody to think like, that it's something to do like after the lethal force incident, having you counseling or something. But it's more like an advanced fight. But anyway, the family one I thought was neat. It was I forget the price, $600 or something, and it's one adult and one kid under 18. So, parent and a kid could show up and learn, I guess, team tactics to some extent. At least experience the class together. But I suspect doing some sort of, if it's family, maybe working together to know, if someone's got a gun, go grab yours and do this kind of thing. I don't know. But anyway, certainly be interesting.
I'm looking at the email now so I can speak more accurately. Family fighting rifle is one of their new classes for 2 people, one being under 18 for $600. And then they have a new coupon code called Family and Friends for 2 people to take the same class for $250 off. That's brand new. I had mentioned the first-time student for $100 off for fighting pistol. And it's called The Fight Continues. That's the name of the class. And they also have an advanced immediate action medical class, which is also new for this year.
All right, thanks for jumping in.
So those are also, again, new additional classes. And then it's called The Fight Continues, which is the force on force and the other one I already mentioned.
All right, well, we're done plugging Jaeger. He's a good dude, and a lot of people, I think, get a bad rap, or he gets a bad rap from a lot of people because, I don't know, they didn't like his one YouTube video or whatever. So, or maybe a bunch of them. I really don't know. I don't watch his YouTube videos. I think we're done. Did we talk about a gun shop today? No. So Dead Horse and I went to a couple of different gun shops. I guess we're going to talk about... No, we only went to 2 gun shops. So we're going to talk about Get Some, gun shop that he's been to, I think, and that's near Salt Lake City. And it's a chain of 5. I'm not sure if we talked about it or not, but it's kind of a shop that's in the in strip centers. So it might be its own building, more than likely. Sometimes it's probably could take like the what am I trying to say? The anchor spot in a strip center. So it's I haven't seen all 5 of them yet, but I'm just guessing by the kind of consistent with the uniformity of the shops that I've seen so far and the number of the quantity of inventory. I'm guessing that they're a growing chain, so each store is probably getting a little bit bigger. I don't know if that door's still in here.
Yep. No, you're right.
Okay. So how big is their biggest store?
Their biggest store is I think it's the second one that they made, and that's in Salt Lake. But their newest one is the one that's out by me. That's their newest store. And they're definitely have a large inventory of especially accessories, optics, stuff like that. And then they carry a large array of firearms. I mean, everything from classic Old West guns to just the newest state-of-the-art desert techs and stuff like that. And most of them all have a range. I think they all have a range except one. So
that's the other thing, is out of range right away. And like you say, the accessories. So I imagine there's something to accessories, and I don't pay enough attention when I go to these shops. I just don't have the luxury of like hanging out at every single shop. I think I do a pretty good job after being around for so long to absorb the quality of the shop. So in other words, you can go into some shops and they've got the equivalent of whatever the sales rep told them was the most popular stuff to order. They bought like the most common stuff or the most universal stuff, the cheapest stuff. Some shops have the opposite. Some shops are like, we have all CZs, or we have all SIGs or HKs or whatever it is they're proud of. Or maybe they have only the most expensive, fancy, local made holsters. There's always these different kind of themes to the shop, and their theme was, basically have a quality accessories instead of just accessories. Like instead of just having a flip up site, they had some name brand that was, medium to better. That's what it seemed like.
No, they definitely carry higher end stuff. You don't find anything that's no name there. And they have fair prices. They have a large selection of ammo. And I don't know about all of them, but at least mine, usually during the weekdays, has a gunsmith on duty. And if you have a problem with a firearm or you can't figure it out, something breaks, you don't know what's going on, if you bought the gun from there, they'll usually fix you up for free. And even if you didn't buy the gun from there, sometimes they'll fix you up for free or help you out or get you pointed in the right direction by an actual gunsmith, not just a salesperson.
And that's pretty cool. I was going to say just, having the selection of quality stuff is, appealing for anybody whose option is to go online and only be able to buy it sight unseen. And then having multiple locations, I'm sure it gives them the ability, instead of just buying, a number of those pieces of accessories or whatever colors, options, instead of just buying like, well, how much is our store going to sell for the next 3 months? Let's make that order, and maybe we gamble and order 6 months worth of stuff and get it at a little bit better price. They can order 6 months worth, and that price is going to be so much lower than a single shop having to buy whatever, 2 years worth of stuff. So their scale has got to be something that leads to their success, I would think. I mean, I'm not saying every time you have 6 shops, you just automatically are going to get them. But I bet
they are a manufacturer. They are manufacturing their own receivers and their own AR-15s. So
like
it says get some guns and ammo right on it.
A variant, so like they have them made, or literally there's a shop someplace in town that they own that is.
They bought, as far as I know, that when LAR Grizzly, when Remington bought LAR Grizzly out, they bought some of LAR Grizzly's old equipment, and they're using that to manufacture their own lower receiver sets, and they're doing it themselves.
Right on. All right.
Which they're actually high quality, other than the long roll mark, the long name on them, but they're actually really nice receiver sets. They really are.
So they're called Get Some, and there's 5 locations.
Yep.
Okay.
I think 5. Yep. And I think all but one has a ring.
Martin is saying, wow, first time over anybody talk positive about James. First time ever anybody talk positive about James? I don't think so. He's got a lot of friends. I think the problem with Jaeger and the Tactical Response alumni is that they hang out on Get Off the X, whatever it's called. And now that he built the new system, and I got a lot more respect for him now that I've listened to some of the podcasts, by the way, because we're going back over to Jaeger. Because some of that first one I listened to was about him getting kicked off of YouTube and then building his own platform. And I'm all about building your own thing, right? I've done that a couple of times. But the problem that you don't hear people talk positive about him is they tend to just hang out by themselves and talk positive to each other, or not even talk about it. They don't need to talk about it because they're all on board. There's something about getting a firearm when, I don't know, a lot of people we talked to didn't grow up with firearms or whatever, but even if you did grow up with firearms, that first time you start to carry, concealed carry or whatever, there's that experience that you go through, that transformation from theory to, living with the consequences and the responsibility. And then when that sinks in, there's that certain, like, I don't know if people call it enlightening or some people call it a weight on their shoulders, but there's certainly something different there. you experience that when you first start to carry. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, yeah. I felt like a what do you call it? Well, fish out of water when I first started carrying.
Well, but then once you become comfortable, let me put that caveat on there. Once you become comfortable carrying, you understand the responsibility, you get to that level, and then you become comfortable, and then it's like, all right, you've gotten to a level, let's say. And then you go to your first training class, if you ever decide to actually go to a training class or you have the opportunity and you go, maybe before you're even training, I think more people probably experience a competition. You go to a Glock thing. Even if you hate Glocks, go to a Glock match. There's only 3 stages, so you can watch an entire Glock match in like 20 minutes. So if it's something you turns out you hate, you figure it out in 20 minutes and you're out of there. But if you love it, you can sit there for 40 minutes and watch 2 people go through the entire match. So you get like a little tiny mini match that they give away like 5 or 6 Glocks at each one. So for the $35 it costs to play that game with Glock one afternoon at a range, it's actually like 45 or whatever dollars per run. But it's again 3 runs, so you can, or 3 little stages, so you can. I've seen people do 5, 6 times through it in a weekend, and each one of those is another potential to win a free Glock, either by winning the match or just randomly by being there. So anyway, go to a match, and then you get that kind of you feel like you've figured something out. Like, oh, okay, like there's a whole nother way to use firearms. It's not just hunting. It's not just target shooting, right? I get to run around. There's holsters. There's other people here that are really into this. Heck, people meet their loves of their lives at these things, right? Meet chicks and meet dudes that are into shooting, and they're happily ever after. So there's lots of cool stuff that goes on. Kids are there, growing up and doing this stuff from the beginning, so they got all that kid agility and speed and reflex, and they're just dominating the sport and making it challenging for everybody else. You got the whole like competition between types of guns and calibers and polymer and steel and aluminum frames. So there's all this kind of stuff going on. So once you experience that for the first time, you got that kind of feeling going on. I'm trying to explain that you get these like different experiences as a firearms owner. Again, if you go to training then for the first time, and maybe not even the first time, you go to training though, at some point you're going to find an instructor who gives you that same level of like, oh, okay, now I get it. Like I've figured out why these people who talk about training. There's something to get there, and that's hard to explain. I don't know if I've explained it well or not, but once you get to that level, I don't want to call it enlightenment because it's more of like an aha moment or something. But once you get there, depending on how you got there and what level of your experience or whatever, I think a lot of people from Jaeger, he's giving you a pretty good aha moment. I mean, like he's got some really, really good stuff and it just cuts right to the core. So you're just right there. And I think a lot of people that appreciate that are like, okay, I'm done. Like I'm going to go train other places, but people that hang out here like are good to go. Like no matter what, like the world ends tomorrow, these are the people you want to hang with. The world doesn't end tomorrow, these are the people you want to party with because they're just good people. You need help, you got it. They need help, I'm giving it to them. And because of that, they've just got a really good community over there that's solid, and they're satisfied. They don't run around looking for, what, congratulations from a bunch of people who they don't even know in the rest of the world. They're not looking for fame and glory. So I think James ends up saying weird shit or stupid shit, and then a bunch of people start hating on him, and you've seen him, he just laughs and says, you put something in front of me, it's something for me to stand on and say something dumb next. And anyway, so I think that because he just does that and then steps back down and goes and does his own thing, people think that somehow it bothers him or something. Or that he's not getting enough pat on the back, but no, he's a good dude, and he's got a good family, good community there that supports him. Well, he's definitely cocky, and he just thinks it's funny to bug people because he knows it bugs people. And he's savvy, dude. People think that they've been on the internet for a long time. He's been on the internet like regularly since the mid '90s, like longer than me, really. So, I mean, I was aware of the internet before that, but I certainly wasn't using it. You know, I was fucking around during those years, and he was already on there talking about guns and stuff and becoming an instructor and stuff. So, um, uh, you know, as far as trolls and stuff, he's probably king troll in some respects because some of these kids probably were, like, I don't know if I can say being born when he was already, the possible for them to have been born in like the mid '90s, and then him have already been an internet troll while they were being born.
Yeah, we had trolls. They had trolls in the '90s. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
No, no, I'm just saying, if they were born in the '90s, they'd be 95. They'd be 10 in 2005. They'd be 20 in 2015. Yeah, I guess that would make them internet know-it-alls today. And they literally were being born when he was already on the internet, knowing it and learning it. Anyway, so I was just responding to Martin's comment out there. That's what it's kind of all about. So thanks for leaving a comment. The gun channel site's been a little dead. We do appreciate the people, though, that have commented over there. It was definitely lively earlier. And yeah, thanks again for the people that are willing to stick through some of the glitches. It's as if YouTube doesn't have glitches or whatever, but people overlook them so easily when the rest of the salty, tasty platform is so easy to consume. So challenge yourselves once in a while. Get off the teat of the big platforms, especially Facebook. I haven't even hardly used Facebook. Like all the stuff that points to Facebook is dead. I mean, maybe I'm suffering a little bit, I suppose, but you know, these platforms are hardly necessary. And you know, as soon as more and more people, or as more and more people let go of their ties to those platforms, their friends do, and then it's exponential. Same way they grew quickly, you know, they'll expire, and it's not like they have to go anywhere. They've got the rest of the world, and it'll take them a decade before they figure out we're not using it anymore, right? Maybe not a decade, but it'll at least take them a little while before they figure out we're not using it, and you know, the company will still be going and kicking out tax money to us. So it's not like you're gonna bankrupt them by losing, you know, quitting support of them. All right, well, I think we've talked ourselves out. I have. So we're going to end it, so you don't have to worry about it, Dano. Thanks for for jumping in. Dog, thanks for jumping in. You got anything coming up?
Yeah, we're doing our contest right now. We're only a few subscribers away before we pick another winner for winning some free dog gear. So if you would like a chance to win free dog gear, please remember to use the Instagram hashtag Muscle Dog Mafia when you make your Instagram posts of your four-legged partners.
I got a question. If somebody wants to learn a little bit more about the book that you have out, where can they get that?
Go over to muscledogmafia.com, and the book is for sale all over that website.
Right on. Then, Dead Horse, you got anything coming up? You get done with the bathroom?
No, my shower, almost. I got a shower door coming Saturday, and then it'll all be done. Then I'll be back to working on the gun room. And I'm picking up all my wood sheetrock and stuff's going to be delivered Saturday for my gun room. So hopefully I'll have all that up by Monday. So, and I just have a little PSA before we go. I just want to, you know, remind everyone that has kids out there, whether it's Halloween or not, whether your kids are using a cap gun, an airsoft gun, or whatever, make sure that you teach them right, teach them well, and make sure that they know what to do.
Right on. And let's put out a public service announcement, because even though it is Halloween's almost over, just in case your kid's like, oh crap, I almost forgot it's Halloween. I'm going to go run around and do trick-or-treating right now. Don't let them wear a Hillary mask. All right. See everybody tomorrow.
Good night, guys.